Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Well, I am just pumped about week number 4 for Meaningful Metric Beastmode, and we're going to talk about savings.
Savings, yes, it's a big shift from where we were at, when we were talking about risk and the very numbers heavy, and when we were getting into lots of different stats. Now we're going to shift over to savings, and again, we're going to start with knowing your numbers, but again, it's so much more than just numbers. So Howie, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think you started off well. First, know your numbers. So first of all, I think just that statement, know your numbers in terms of your expenses, what are your ongoing expenses? I think just thinking about that and saying, do I know what my expenses are? A lot of businesses don't. There's a great show my wife and I love. You should check it out, Beastman, if you haven't checked it out, called Restaurant Impossible.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
Robert Irvin comes in. Yeah, I love all those kinds of, fix-it-up shows. My wife, Jamie, loves that a lot as well. I can always count on her to watch that, or Marcus Lemonis and The Prophet. I recommend both of those shows. And, of course, famous Shark Tank. But anyway, know your numbers comes across in all 3 of those shows, right? So what are your ongoing expenses? If you are a startup, what's your cash burn rate? You better know if you're going to raise more, or if you're an established business and you're not in a negative cash burn situation, you still want to know what your expenses are. It's a really important understanding, because the difference between your expenses and your profits, or your difference between your sales and your expenses is your profit. So you really need to know that. So yeah. So what are your ongoing expenses? The next one is, are your expenses rising or falling? So Meaningful Metrics fits really well into this one this week, because we want to understand that these are a metric and that you can track these. You ought to be able to track these over time. You need to have a way, you have to think through what that looks like. Like, how am I going to track it? And I think so Beast Mode, my opinion on this, I'll see what you think, but having just a few metrics to start off with in terms of your costs and your expenses is certainly better than being overwhelmed and trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah, totally agree. We've been, for the entire 4 weeks of metrics, we've been talking about that. You can obviously always overwhelm yourself with metrics, and that's not our goal, is to find so much data that you don't know what to do with it. But you should have, bare minimum, you should know how much is going out, especially if there's not a whole lot coming in. You got to be really frugal, and you got to understand. And so some of these are going to be followed up. So are expenses rising or falling? And then, so that's a yes, no. Yes, they're rising. No, they're falling. But then it may be a follow-up of why. Is this a trend? Have they been falling for 2 months? Did something change? Did we not pay a bill? Are we forgetting something?
Wow.
Or are they rising? Why are they rising? Did something happen? Do we need to adjust? These are just simple ways that you're just being a good steward over what you currently have.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really good. The why question was a really nice value add, Beast Mode. So basically, okay, by tracking it from April to May to June, let's say, and I see that June is, 19% higher than April, what changed in May or in June to make that big of a jump, right? And the why question, which was such a brilliant ad that you had there, was allowing me to dig in and give myself permission to interrogate my business to find out why that actually did increase. And maybe it was just a very thoughtless, kind of a expense, or maybe there's something that happened. But and maybe you took on some new expenses for a good reason, but maybe you didn't think about trying to trim something else somewhere else. So you didn't have quite such a jump.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. The next one is, are expenses rising or falling relative to sales? So it's kind of piggybacks off the same one. When my sales, when they're increased, or are they decreasing? Are my expenses rising and falling with it? And that's one of the things that a lot of businesses don't take into account. They want to take into account growth, but they don't take into account cost of growth. is it feasibly, or is it feasible to grow? Is it worth it to grow, or is it this my most efficient model that I'm currently in?
Hmm.
Just something to consider.
Mm-hmm. It's good. I think, and I don't know how much we've emphasized this before, but as people who frankly do consulting, Beast Mode does more of it than I do. It's kind of a new thing for me. But we would be remiss if we didn't say that it's a good idea to bring in somebody with sort of that outside picture, that outside view, who can see things with fresh eyes. So talk to your CPA, talk to a fractional, consultant who can take a look at things and find out, do you have some waste? Identify, why are expenses rising? If they're falling, that's great. Let's make sure that we understand the reasons why. But also just in general, where can I save money? And a lot of times these experts know the tricks and they're ethical. It's just that there's tricks. I mean, just like, Warren Buffett has tricks because of the knowledge and the people that he surrounds himself with. Let's be willing to look at an advisor. I think a few hours would make a really big difference.
Yeah, and especially in light of this time, I've read several articles just today about how, number one, if you are a consultant, I'm speaking to you, you should be offering your services at a discounted rate right now, just to show empathy. And some of it may be, an hour at a discounted rate, or an hour for free, and then, if you like it, then you sign on. But there's so many people who are doing this. So if you're on the business side, there's so many CPAs that are out there right now that are helping small businesses or medium businesses, and just say, hey, a lot of times they'll give a free or a severely reduced rate, given light of the circumstances, which, if you're listening after the fact, we're in the middle, maybe the middle, I don't think we know of COVID, but, we have a lot of race discriminations and things that are happening, and a lot of uncertainty. And so that's what we're in the middle of. And so there's that opportunity for us consultants to lead by example, but then as a businesses, there's no harm in asking that question. So great idea.
No, it's really good. I love the compassion angle too. We bring in faith on this, podcast lightly, but we bring it in from time to time because it's such a good seasoning to all of our content. And that is just a wonderful thing to do, to offer that, at a discount, offer your services at a discount right now when people are in such hurting. So I might jump into this because my wife and I do this on a personal basis a lot, and then I'll flip it to you. But what we do is periodically we will look at our personal finances. We'll look at our personal bills and we'll try to negotiate or lower. So I just called Time Warner Cable. Spectrum is the subsidiary company I think that I work with. And I got a discount from negotiating with them. You're supposed to negotiate your homeowner's insurance and your auto insurance every couple of years as well. It's about time probably that my wife and I do that, but and a lot of times you have different bills creep up that are just kind of a waste that you may or may not be actually utilizing. So it's a good idea to really think about and really audit what are, go to your bank statement or go, I hope your business has a budget. I hope your business has a tracker. If not, hit us up privately because I have a template you can use. It's a simple spreadsheet, but it would be a really easy way for you to track your business expenses. And it provides a way of tracking the historical. It's something my wife and I have been using for 20 years. So it's simple, but it's pretty rich as well, frankly. But anyway, you need to track what your monthly bills are and what your monthly expenses are. So what your actual expenses are, what your predicted expenses are, and what your historical are, and have the ability to compare. So in my last company, there's a famous data provider for sales that if I said the name, a lot of this crowd would probably know who I'm talking about. They build in a 10% increase annually. And they said if I didn't want to build that in, I had to basically submit a cancellation or submit a non-renewal request. And so that's what I did. So in my last company, I submitted a non-renewal with them, and the renewal is actually due this month. And my objective, which I passed this along to the business owner who's continuing on with this project, I have let them know they need to negotiate and not accept the increase. So anyway, looking at your bills, that's kind of the major heading.
For employee cost, am I getting what I'm going to get out of my employees? I'm paying for 5 full-time employees. Do I need 5? Do I need 3? What am I looking at? Again, and depending on the size of your business, maybe you're looking at employee health insurance. You're looking at all those and you're shopping all that different stuff. You're shopping, where are you buying supplies from? But at the end of the day, there's an opportunity, and we should look at it. We shouldn't just have a blind eye to the light bill or have a blind eye to cable or internet. Those are all valuable things that, just like other meaningful metrics, we oftentimes gloss over for the pretty prize, which is a sale. But a lot of times, if you were to cut utilities, cut insurance, trim some fat, maybe it's the same equivalent as a sale.
Good job.
So
literally, yeah, I didn't put that in the notes. That's so good. I actually had that thought and didn't put it in the notes. I don't know why. You just pulled it right out. So Beastmode and I are in the sales industry, generally speaking. He's also in marketing and social and stuff like that. I'm a little bit more just on sales. But it's a really valid point that it's just like selling. To cut a bill is just like selling. And, it's pretty satisfying when you can have your sales mean more because you're cutting, internal expenses. So great idea and great point on that for sure.
The next big bold topic we're going to talk about is purchasing. And so there's so many different things with purchasing. Our first bullet point we just want to cover is multi-year agreements in exchange for savings. It's something that Howie just kind of alluded to with the big box data. Were they storage? Is that what they did? Data storage for you, or what?
Yeah. Well, it's like one of these providers that provide like sales contact information, like phone and email. Yeah,
gotcha.
One of those guys. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that maybe for him, he negotiated the fact that I'm going to remove this. Yes, there's some due diligence that takes place on my end, but maybe you can negotiate in, hey, let's extend this out. I know we're not going to cancel it. So I know you only requested 1 year, but let's do 3. And what's that going to do for me? And if it doesn't, then you say, I'm going to call somebody else. I'm a salesman. So why not treat my utilities or my internet just like anything else? So
that's awesome. So yeah, and we originally did a 3-year deal with them, by the way. So that is valid. We got a pretty smoking deal with them because we did multiple reasons why. We had a decent sized purchase too, but we did a 3-year deal. So yeah, it's absolutely, these multi-year agreements, vendors really get excited. In fact, the last company I worked for, actually, we had, I think it was a 15%, a few years ago, it was 15%, and they recently dropped it to 12. But if you do a multi-year deal, you automatically get, I think it's a 12% discount. And so companies have those deals. If you will commit to them longer, it makes their business more secure. It's a great idea to take advantage of those if you can. Another one that people do is that sometimes people have a net 30 or I don't know the term, but you save like 5% if you pay within a week or 2 weeks or something instead of just waiting for net 30, then you get a little bit of a break. And we've actually noticed in my last company, for example, a large bank, they always take that. They always take it because it's free money, and they're willing to, send you your payment earlier and take that 5% or that 4%. And so it's funny because, our people always warned us, your commissions is going to go down a little bit because they are going to short pay this. They're going to short pay it by 5% or 4% and pay us early, but that's good for it's good for the health of the company to get paid faster. So look for those things where if you pay quicker, then you can actually get a discount. That's awesome. That's free money. Why wouldn't you? If you're going to buy it anyway, why wait for net 30 or net 45? Go ahead and pay early and take your little discount. Those are really nice. It's free money. So another big one too.
And just asking about it. No, it's just asking, just getting in that culture, that mindset of just treating your bills and your numbers and your saving, treating your expenses, treating it just like you would a sale. I mean, if I'm on the phone with Brian and me and Howie are just sitting here, we're having a conversation, I'm going to continue asking questions until the call's done. And I'm going to, maybe things that I don't know if he's interested in or not, but there's only one way to find out. And so just treating this form of the business, this side of the business, the same way as you would treat the sales side of it or the operation side, whatever side that you're on, you know. And this is just being a good steward. Being a good steward is not just focusing on, you know, on Brian on the sales side. For him to be a good steward, he needs to focus on the ops side, and he's focused on the development side and expenditures. We all got to know it. And so,
so good.
Being well-rounded.
Well, one of the things that really jumped out at me, and I'm just giving you a major high five here, is you use the word culture.
Yeah.
And people do talk about culture, but I don't know that people usually tie culture and savings together. But if you literally make it a focus of the company, that guys, we can hire more people, and we can give more employee benefits, and we can do more marketing, and we can do great things. Every dollar that we save, we're just going to reinvest it. You know, I'm not going to go buy a Ferrari as the business owner. I'm going to reinvest that. So, you know, a culture of savings is a great idea. Making sure that we reinforce that in discussions and in language and in messaging. And wow,
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And just to kind of finalize that thought, there is a difference between having a culture of savings and being thrifty or cheap. There is a negative connotation, and that is, again, just like how he was saying, if I'm not reinvesting. So if I have a salesperson who's reaching out to you know, my lead generator, whoever, and closing that deal, but if they close the deal and save me money, I shouldn't pocket that. I should reinvest that. You know, maybe $500 they save me, reinvest it into that person. You know, because now it's just like feedback. Now they know, hey, this is a great thing. I should be doing this on every aspect of my
Before we
job.
do that, we're going to wrap up on the purchasing. You know, let's be honest that we all want to be nice, and I know some people don't. Okay, but a lot of people do just want to be nice, and you know, so they kind of take the vendor's word for it, and the vendor's offers them a 10% discount. No, we need to go and nail them. I'm sorry, you're giving them a new logo, you're giving them, you know, money for the solution. You need to nail them with a counteroffer. They offer you 10, you need to go in with 50 or 40. And you need to have, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but you know what? It's uncomfortable twice. You need to do that for your business. You may be able to save Sharon's job later on because of that, right? Think about that in terms of people, especially when you're talking about national riots we're dealing with right now, and race pain that the country's having, and the pandemic. My word. I mean, you may be able to save Sharon's job. Think about it that way, right? That big enterprise software deal that they want to charge you for, you know, if you can save 50%, you may be able to save a lot more than just money on software, okay? Or on whatever it is. So yeah, lead. So, and again, it fits to Beast Mode's great comment about a culture of savings, because when you force big discounts on everything and you lead with counter offers, you know, 50% or whatever counter offers, and you stick to that and you shop, even, and if they won't listen, you know, if they won't come down, then you're willing to go look around, kind of thing. And if you are willing to do that, then it's, you know, if you have a habit of that, right, it may not always work, but if you have a habit of that, then those savings do add up. And by the way, talk about metrics, it'd be fun to actually have a spreadsheet where you looked at what was the initial offer from different vendors and what did you get it for. That would be rewarding. You could celebrate that.
Yeah, totally true. That last point, I think every person who truly followed through on that, who would take the initial offer, take the final offer, and tally those up, and then maybe spread that out over 6 months or a year, whatever the agreements are, and then just look at yourself and say, you know, this is a quick way to hire another employee. This is a quick way to expand, you know, my business. You know, depending upon what the savings are, who knows? I mean, you could potentially, depending upon the value, you know, add another location, you know, or offer your employees benefits. They didn't have them because you couldn't afford it. Now you can. You know, the sky's the limit just based upon the conversation, but you can't do any of that unless you're willing to have the conversation. And quite frankly, even if they say, no, Howie, 10% is all we're going to do. That person, that account manager, whoever's over your account, I guarantee is going to know, at least if there's somebody like me, they're going to know this person is looking for more. So we have to be on our game, or else I know that they may shop us, and that's not a bad place to be in. Just hey, you're not the only internet provider in town. And although I think you're worth whatever the amount, I'm letting you know that I can get it cheaper over here. I'm not doing it right now, but I'm letting you know that if I have some troubles, that's where I'm going to go. And you're just going to get better service. So
it's good to have strong relationships, but savings doesn't have to be for that. So I think those are really good points. Well, you want to shift into technology?
Let's do it. I think this is a big focus, and I know it's something that will tingle your heart on the inside just because you really like technology. So.
Well, I do, and I want to give credit to my brother, Jeremy Howard, who spoke with me in preparation for the call. So thank you, Jeremy, for
giving us some
awesome, notes here. For the first one that he said, and since I've sold technology for my whole career, I definitely understood what he was saying. But I mean, I wouldn't have written these all down if it wasn't for him. But consolidating technology, he said, one thing you want to do is that business runs on technology now everywhere. So if you consolidate technologies, then you have an opportunity for savings because they all cost a lot of money. And so the first one that, he just kind of gave me that one bullet point. So I kind of unpacked it. The first one is duplication of licenses. So for example, do I have too many licenses? So I'll give you a great example. That same dev provider that I mentioned a little while ago, I did a little bit of a reduction and I dropped 2 seats that we weren't using. I was able to save some money. So identifying software that's not in use, auditing that, taking the appropriate discount because you're able to drop some licenses, is a really good way to consolidate your technologies. Duplication, if you have 2 different, for example, some companies might be using both Slack and Microsoft Teams, right? They do the same thing. So can you come up with a corporate standard and just go with one? So you're literally paying for 2 if you don't, right? And technologies like that. What are some other thoughts around this, Beastmode?
Yeah, and so my thought that came to my mind is for a lot of small business owners, you get a lot of nickels and dimes. So you get somebody who does, let's say your payments. You get somebody who does your computer software. You get somebody, so you're doing all these different, and each one of them is charging you full price because you're not doing multiple different services. So maybe consolidating, it's not necessarily technologies, but consolidating providers and saying, okay, is there one person who can accommodate everything that I have? That's not really the place I like to be in. I don't really like to pay one person for everything, but if I can consolidate, and then I can work out a bigger deal with them.
No, I think it's valid though. I know you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, but the nice thing if you do have fewer vendors is that you have fewer things to train people on. So you have, that's kind of a savings of manpower. You also have a little bit better work experience if all of your solutions work together, or if more of your solutions work together. For example, in my last company, we use Zenefits, and Zenefits offers, some key things like time off requests and some very simplistic HR type reviews, but they have other products as well. And so it is nice with me as an employee if I log in and I can just, do a lot of my HR kind of different things and benefits through one portal. It's easier. And then to Beastmode's awesome point, if I have more of my eggs in their basket, I can benefit from their, discount approach. Same thing with insurance. You guys all know that if you have your house and you have your car, both with the same vendor, you get what's called a multi-line discount. It's substantial. So that kind of, works in technology as well. When you buy this, they call it, buying the suite strategy, SUITE. suite, buying a bundle, the software bundle instead of just the individual buying them. So Beastmode's got a great point right there. I will add the next one, which is Jeremy talked about shadow IT, which is a little bit of a technical term that not everybody's familiar with. So what shadow IT means is that all the different areas of the business start buying software on their own because they can. Because now that you have software as a service, I mean, I could go, okay, let's say that my company uses Salesforce.com. I could go use HubSpot or Sugar or Zoho or whatever and not really tell anybody, to be honest. I could just go do it and I could start putting my data in there. And now I've got data outside that are outside of security controls, that are outside of everybody else's visibility and controls. And I've got a bill that I'm expensing for, let's say for HubSpot, when the company has a corporate license for Salesforce.com, right? So there's duplication of licenses there. There's shadow IT there, so there's security risks and things of that nature. So eliminating shadow IT by saying, listen, if you just hate Salesforce and you love HubSpot or whatever, then let's do a shootout, let's do an evaluation and think about consolidating that technology corporate wide, and we'll start using HubSpot everywhere. Or let's find out, let's interrogate the reasons for shadow IT and say, what is it that corporate IT is not providing you that you're doing a backup to the cloud when we already have a backup you can use? Why are you backing up your stuff from your desk to the cloud when we already have a cloud provider? You know what I mean? And so there's costs that you're expensing. So you're expensing that $40 a month, and how many of those $40 a month are happening across your business that should, that are skipping corporate standards and that are skipping IT control and IT security because of shadow IT. And shadow IT is a massive problem in business. And a lot of the time it's because people are afraid that IT is not meeting their needs, that IT is slow and hard to work with. Some of those things are valid. That's true in some ways. So as IT, we've got to be better listeners. We've got to be more nimble. We've got to be, like Beastmode and I always hammer, and he's going to laugh, but I mean, this is about feedback, IT feedback survey. What are we not doing?
Yeah.
And trying to nip that shadow IT in the bud, because it's expensive when you start going, you're duplicating, a software vendor that we already have something for.
Yeah. And, I personally haven't had to deal that much with, shadow IT and the way you're explaining it. But the way I've had to deal with it is between myself and customers, or myself and vendors. And it's, everybody's got their own way of doing things, but it's like, hey, if we are going to do business, we put all our data here. If we're going to, follow this, we have a process, we have a protocol. And if we go outside of it, it's maybe it's wasting time. And, the more time I'm having to work, if everybody works an extra hour, that's not savings,
Mm-hmm.
So just because we're duplicating processes or procedures. So similar, I think, but yeah.
It certainly fits in.
Yeah. Keep going. You're on a roll.
Yeah, I mean, the next one that's pretty big is, there's a market. There's what's called a secondary market. Actually, I made that up. I don't know what it's called. I made that up. But there is a secondary market, and it might be called the gray market, by the way. That's ringing a bell. But anyway, there are people that buy your old computers, right? So instead of you just letting your employee have that and giving, for $100, like a lot of times the people will say, hey, you can buy your old work laptop for $100, right? Okay, that's cool. I mean, if that's a benefit, I can see, whatever, maybe you want to do that. But let's set aside laptops for a moment. What about your old router or your old server or your old workstation or your old printer? The next one Jeremy gave me was so good, and he's so right. Listen, I don't want to disrespect Accenture or IBM Global Services or DXC or some of the really big consulting firms out there, but they are expensive. And so is it possible that instead of using technology vendors from let's just call it the big five, and there's probably like 10 or something, right? There's Tata, whatever, there's T-Systems, and there might be places for you that you want to use those. But is it possible there's a small and a mid-size that's an expert that might be real flexible in financial terms, and they might be less expensive, and they might be hungry, and they might work really hard for you, versus some of the huge guys who really aren't interested unless it's, hundreds of thousands, minimum kind of deal. I know we're talking to probably more small and mid-sized business people on this podcast. But you know what? Those types of expensive consultants will really eat your lunch. So I think if you want to maybe consider using, the local consultants and the mid-sized companies, I think that's a really good idea. Give people a chance. I mean, I think Beastmo would say, hey, for JL, he appreciates when, he's in a competitive situation and somebody gives his startup a chance. And I think he works, frankly, harder as a result, versus maybe the big guys who kind of can beat their chest a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many benefits of working with smaller businesses, smaller consulting firms, whatever you want to call it. Now there are negatives, and it's just based upon what your needs are. But again, if they're comparable to how they can service you as a business, but quite frankly, they're probably going to give you better customer service. They're probably going to be more responsive. They're probably going to give you a better deal. It's one of those things that, then again, you're just upfront with them. Hey guys, I'm using you guys at any point in time. If there's an issue, I will go to the big business. That's not what I want to do. I want to use you guys. It's not a threat. I'm just telling you, I trust you guys, but I got to have this stuff. And so I'm just letting you know up front.
Good. And then two more things, unless we come up with some more stuff. The first one is to consider technology outside of kind of the real expensive big vendors as well. I mean, you've got some of your big vendors have a small business offering, a mid-sized business offering, in which case they can be perfect. Like Microsoft Office 365 has different tiers for smaller businesses. I've used those business tiers before. I'm sure Beastmode has too. Google has a G Suite. So, there's ways of kind of tapping into some of the bigger software firms when they have small and mid-sized business programs. But certainly, especially if you're in the mid-size or a little bit of the larger size organization, consider using these scrappy startups and competitors who, you don't want to be their first customer, but, instead of using someone huge like IBM and Broadcom and Microsoft and Oracle and, Salesforce and some of these giant companies all the time who can be expensive, particularly if they don't have these SMB offerings, consider using the startups that are sometimes doing some really cool things with AI and machine learning, and they're really innovating and they're kind of breaking eggs that, the bigger guys might be a little bit slower to kind of get to those types of things. So consider using sort of not just tier one software and hardware providers is kind of what a recommendation I would think.
Yep. Again, I can't agree more. You're going to get something, and a lot of these places, they're going to customize to you, as opposed to Salesforce. They're going to say, this is what we have. You're going to take it or leave it. Some of these guys maybe customize and say, hey, this is what our normal thing is, but we can add this, this, and this. It's not going to cost any extra, but I think it's going to be benefits to you. And it's just one of those things. So,
no, I think it's a really key thought there. And then the last one is use the cloud. So, we have an opportunity when you use the cloud, you only pay for what you actually use. So that's, when you run your applications in the cloud, you can run with a fairly lean sort of, technology setup. And then you can have the settings to where as your application is used more, then more server resources are deployed, and then those will auto clean up and shrink back down and save you money. So you're actually charged only for what you use. So that's called, if you want to look this up, that's called infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. And some of the vendors that are great with that are Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, GCP or Google Cloud. And all three of those allow you to run, basically you get to rent server time for them. But people like Pinterest and Netflix run their whole business on these public clouds. They call them public clouds, IaaS, public clouds. And so what's nice about those is that you get paid, you get a monthly bill, and it's just for whatever you use. And so if your application is growing and it's popular with customers, or with employees, and it's very successful, then you'll get charged, more, because the applications will grow and scale automatically. But then also, as things are not running at a peak, they can actually deprovision services, deprovision servers, and save you money. So you basically, it's a very, your bill sort of follows your usage instead of you committing to a lot of money all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, intelligent use of the cloud, I would be happy to have those conversations with anybody. Totally free. I'm fine just giving you some thoughts on, those 3 areas. But the 3 areas of cloud to look at that Jeremy wanted me to pass along to you guys are IaaS, infrastructure as a service, PaaS, which is platform as a service. It's a little bit more niche, and I'm not as familiar with that actually. And then SaaS. So SaaS is people like HubSpot, Salesforce, Zenefits, Workday. I mean, everybody who basically has these business apps in the cloud now where you just log in and use them, that's called SaaS. So most of your stuff now is available via SaaS. And what's nice about that is they do all the maintenance. You just use them, which is really good. So I highly recommend those. But that's kind of all I had, Beastmode. Any more thoughts on savings? You had some huge ads today. I love the culture one, but many others.
Yeah, no, I want to button this one up and know that savings, just like we've said every time, risk is a metric, savings is a metric, and there's so many things that sometimes we just discount that are metrics, but savings is a metric. And just like next week, we're talking about growth of your team, growth overall is a metric, and it's probably one that I've been the most excited about. I've kept it on the DL this entire time, but it's one that I definitely am excited to tap into and see where that goes. But Howie, thank you as always.
Love it. Thanks.
Appreciate you taking some time, and we will catch you guys next week.
See you guys. Cheers.